welcome back to the second part of the lecture in which we are discussing the emergence of international relations as a modern discipline, as a modern subject. Now, the emergence of liberal international relations is closely connected with the emergence of modern liberal state. Modern liberal state emerged, as we know, sometimes in the 16th and 17th century. Sometimes the Treaty of Westphalia of 1648 is marked as the beginning of sovereign states. All the liberal philosophers of the 16th and 17th and subsequent centuries who are associated with liberal political thought can also be considered as the precursors of liberal international relations. For example, John Locke, who had a belief in human progress, in modern civil society, and in capitalist economy. He believed that the individual liberty is the core value and that states come into existence with the help of a social contract that individuals enter into in order to protect their life, liberty, and property. So, individual liberty and human progress are the core values which underlie the modern liberal international relations as propounded by John Locke. Modernity is both an optimistic belief in progress as well as a belief in scientific revolution, which believes that modern technology, that human reason and rationality can help in alleviation of human conditions, in solving various human problems, and in promoting human well-being and human freedom. Jeremy Bentham talks about the greatest happiness of the greatest number, which is the core principle of utilitarianism, which was one of the shades of liberalism. So, liberalism basically believes that progress is possible, that peace is possible, that cooperation is possible, and all this is based on a positive view of the human nature, a view that human beings are rational, that human beings are peaceful, that human reason should be the sole guiding principle behind human action. They also believe that rational principles can be applied to international relations also. Just as individuals can think and act rationally, similarly, the states can also act rationally. Liberalism believes that individuals are self-interested, that they are mainly motivated by and guided by their self-interest, and which is defined in terms of their well-being, which is defined in terms of their profit. Individuals can also be competitive. Just as individuals are competitive, states are also competitive. But just as individuals can also enter into cooperation and collaboration in order to promote their common good, in order to promote their well-being, in order to further their profit as well as their rights and freedoms. Similarly, the states can also engage in collaboration and cooperation. So, basically, the liberals believe that conflict and war are not inevitable. There can be other ways through which differences and conflicts can be resolved apart from warfare. However, there are limits to this view of international relations, the liberal view of international relations. There were certain times when this liberal view had a very high acceptability and it was very popular. For example, in the aftermath of the First World War, there was a widespread belief that war is redundant, that war is avoidable, that war is an evil and has to be avoided at any cost. So this was in the immediate aftermath of the First World War during 1920s. Robert Keohane says that at least there is a possibility of cumulative progress. So there was a faith that war can be avoided, that progress can be made. Similarly, just as after the end of the First World War, at the end of Cold War, that was after 1991 also, there was again a belief, a hope, an optimism that this was the time when humans can advance to a more mature form of interaction. It was believed that with the end of communism, there was also an end of history, that Western liberal democracy had come out victorious and all the countries throughout the world would like to follow a liberal democratic path and a capitalist economic model. However, just as the first optimistic period after the First World War came to an end during 1930s and 40s when Second World War was fought, similarly, this second period of optimism after the Cold War also came to an end when the world witnessed the 9/11 attacks at the beginning of 21st century, when there was a terrorist attack in Washington and in New York. There were others. Similarly, since then we have seen various attacks in various parts of the world, terrorist attacks. There have been other problems because of which the belief in progress, the belief that humans can really achieve permanent peace has taken a backseat and has been undermined. Some of the early thinkers, liberal thinkers, one we have already talked about, that was John Locke, which believed that states came into existence in order to protect life, liberty and property of the people, to promote happiness without interference from any agency. There was another thinker about whom also we have talked, Jeremy Bentham, who propounded utilitarianism and who believed in greatest good of greatest number. Incidentally, he also coined the term international law. He believed that rational interest of constitutional states is best served if they follow international law. Among the early thinkers, we have also discussed Immanuel Kant, his democratic peace theory. He also believed that constitutional and mutually respectful states, states which are governed according to constitutions, who respect each other's freedom and independence, and these states he called republics. He believed that they could establish perpetual peace in the world. So this was democratic peace theory. There are various shades of liberal international relations. At least 4 of these I would like to discuss briefly. The first is sociological liberalism. Sociological liberalism believes that international relations is not only about state-to-state relations. It also it also covers transnational relations between people, between groups, between various organizations, and in these interactions there are many actors, not just the national governments, the nation states, but there are various other groups, organizations and associations which are also important actors. Therefore, sociological liberalism basically believes in pluralism. One of the important thinkers of sociological liberalism was James Rosenau. He says that the processes whereby international relations conducted by governments have been supplemented by relations among private individuals, among groups and societies that can and do have important consequences for the course of events. So, Rosenau also talks about relations not just between states but also between individuals, groups and societies. Yet another thinker, Karl Deutsch, he talks about high degree of transnational ties between societies, and he believes that this can lead to peaceful relations. Peaceful relation is not just absence of war. There is something more than mere absence of war when we talk about peaceful relations. There is possibility of collaboration and cooperation also. He talks about security community, which means a group of people which has become integrated. Integrated means which have come together in order to resolve differences without resort to large scale physical force. So, these groups or people integrate because they believe that without resorting to war, through peaceful negotiations and cooperation, they can achieve their goals and objectives. Karl Deutsch uh, talks about the countries of North Atlantic area, mainly the countries of Western Europe, the countries of North America, who believe in this approach and who have achieved peace and progress by following this approach. He also talks about certain basic conditions, conditionalities, in order to achieve this type of peace and progress. He talks about increased social communication among people and groups, about mobility of people, persons from one country to another country. He talks about increased economic ties among societies, among states, and various types of transactions that humans and societies and groups can enter into. Yet another thinker is John Burton. He talks about a cobweb model. By cobweb model, he means a world driven more by mutually beneficial cooperation than by antagonistic conflict. He believes that there can be beneficial effects of cross-cutting and overlapping group membership. If individuals are members of various types of groups, communities and societies, and membership of these groups and societies are overlapping, then the individuals will get many platforms through which they can narrow down their differences, they can achieve cooperation and promote their collective well-being, they can prevent conflict, which may not be totally eliminated, but at least individuals can find a way to substantially reduce the chance of such conflicts. James Rosenau was yet another thinker. He talks about transformation of international system. The state-centric international relations in which the anarchic states interact with each other and sometimes leads to conflict. Now, this may not totally go away, but a new multicentric world uh, has evolved, is emerging, that is composed of diverse sovereignty-free collectivities or groups which are not like nation states focused on national sovereignty and therefore find it easier to interact, to cooperate and to collaborate. The world is becoming increasingly pluralistic and peaceful, of various transnational networks of individuals and groups, and these individuals and groups, because they interact at so many levels, they are not exactly enemies and they get a chance to resolve their differences. Yet another writer is Phil Cerny. He makes a distinction between, he says that the earlier distinction between domestic and international is no longer relevant. It is not totally going away, but relations among states are slowly being transformed. But he also believes that differences or conflicts may not totally go away. He comes out with 4 possible scenarios, from a rosy and cooperative framework to a more hegemonic and more conflict-prone scenario. He also talks about transnationally linked groups of political actors who engage in cross-cutting competition, coalition building, exploiting the growing institutional loopholes of global politics, and try to construct new power games. So these actors do not give away competition, but at the same time they try to maximize their benefit by sometimes by competition and sometimes by constructing new frameworks to cooperate and to come together. Yet another school is interdependence liberalism. It believes in mutual dependence. It believes that peoples and governments are affected by actions of their counterparts in other countries. Richard Rosenkranz talks about changing character and basis of economic production, which is linked to modernization. He believes that economic production is changing because of new technology, because of modernization, and a new qualified labor force is emerging. And there is access to information, there are new technologies, there is new finance capital, and these together lead to success. So he talks about mutual dependence through which people can achieve their goals and states can achieve their goals and objectives. Interdependence liberalism, instead of traditional military political option, talks about intensified international division of labor. So various developed countries, whether they are in the developed north, countries of North America, Western Europe or Japan, they and the other countries have achieved an international division of labor in which most of the manufacturing and high technology is with the developed north, whereas the countries of the south, they provide cheap labor, they provide natural resources, and they serve a very important purpose and role in international division of labor. Ernest Hans comes out with his neo-functionalist theory of international integration that began in the 1950s in Western Europe. He says that integration is a process whereby political actors are persuaded to shift their loyalties towards a new center whose institutions possess or demand jurisdiction over pre-existing national states. Basically, Haas believes in the idea of national actors coming together. What happened in Europe after the end of the Second World War in 1950s and in the subsequent centuries and in recent times. Now, this functional process of integration depends on the notion of spillover, when increased cooperation in one area leads to increased cooperation in other areas. Political elites promote integration because they believe that it serves the purpose of their states and nations. The cooperation which emerged in Western Europe with the formation of Steel and Coal Union in early 50s and which progressed into European Community and later European Union are good examples of this functional approach of integration. There is yet another theory which is called complex interdependence. Robert Keohane and Joseph Nye are the most important writers on this. They believe that relations among states are not primarily relations between leaders, they are relations at different levels via many different actors. Secondly, there are host of transnational relations between individuals and groups outside of states, beyond military force. And military force is of less importance, less use. There are various other ways. So, that is the core idea of complex interdependence. There is institutional liberalism. Institutional liberalism which believes that these institutions can make cooperation easier but can't guarantee and transform IR from jungle to zoo. So they understand the limitations of international liberalism. They believe that these institutions cannot totally convert the jungle into a zoo. International institutions, for example, NATO or EU, they set rules which governs the interaction among states. These set certain regimes which govern the interaction among states. Institutional liberalism help to provide cooperation and alleviate lack of trust between states. Institutional liberals are also behavioralist. They have a scientific approach. They believe that one can find empirical evidence to measure the extent and level of cooperation among states. The last school is that of Republican liberalism, about which in fact we have already discussed. Liberal democracies are more peaceful and law-abiding than other political systems, something which was said by Immanuel Kant, something which later on was propounded and promoted during 1960s. Michael Doyle talks about existence of domestic political cultures based on peaceful conflict resolution. He also talks about democracies. He says that democracies hold common moral values which lead to formation of what Kant once called Pacific Union, a zone of peace based on common moral foundation. The third condition, Doyle says, is peace between democracies. He believes that between democracies there is a pacific union which can be encouraged, which Immanuel Kant calls the spirit of commerce. These states have mutual and reciprocal relations. They gain by having reciprocal and mutual ties, and therefore international economic cooperation and exchange are the core values promoted by Republican liberals. So, dear students, these are some of the readings and we have discussed how liberalism has been one of the major schools and approaches to international relations. In our subsequent discussions, we will see the limitations and critique of liberal international relations, and especially the realist critique of liberal IR. Thank you very much.